Hello everyone, welcome to another new video of mine. Today's video we are going to talk about the age of Chaucer in history of literature. Age of Chaucer basically means the period which is between 1350 to 1450. Almost this 100-year long period in British history is known as the age of Chaucer. So in this video I will be discussing in detail about the major historical socio-political events that shapes the literary development, literary outputs of the age, and most interestingly, Geoffrey Chaucer as the major literary figure of the period, his creative works, what are the major social events and their influences we found in his work. So we'll be discussing all these things in detail. So keep on watching this video. Age of Chaucer basically is a very interesting 100-year long period in British literature. Importantly, Geoffrey Chaucer, we all know about him. He needs no introduction. But Geoffrey Chaucer, whenever we think about this kind of literary prodigy, first time when we think about Geoffrey Chaucer, we believe that he is the father of the modern poetry. Historians call him father of the modern poetry. With Chaucer, we came to find a realistic representation of the life in British literature. We find metrical variations, we find pathos, we find the wonderful representation of dream allegory, we find the influences from the France, we find influences from Italy. So all these wonderful factors take place when we concentrate on the works of Geoffrey Chaucer. As a person, Chaucer in his lifetime, he witnessed the ruling period of three kings, Edward III, Richard II and Henry IV. And most interestingly, Chaucer was a foreign diplomat also. He was the son of a wine merchant in London, and he was married to a noble class, and for his diplomatic mission he was sent to various places in Europe several times. So Chaucer is a very interesting historical person also. So let's discuss in detail. Before looking into the creative works of Geoffrey Chaucer, I think it is very important to know in detail the major historical events, major political events that shape, modify and find its literary expressions in the works of Geoffrey Chaucer. As I have already mentioned, Chaucer witnessed the ruling period of Richard II. So after Edward III's ruling period, we find Richard II's reigning period in Britain, and it is a 20-year long reigning period of King Richard II. 1377 to 1399. This 20-year reigning period of King Richard II witnessed tremendous literary development in England. And also during that time, 1348 to 1350, England was going through difficult situation known as Black Death. What is Black Death? Black Death is an epidemic. The bubonic plague broke out in various parts of England, and this bubonic plague almost caused the death of 1/3 of British population. Bubonic plague first appeared in 1348 in Dorset, and it reached its peak in the summer of 1349, killing 200 people per day in London. The immediate effect of the Black Death is that England had lost 1/3 of its population. So depopulation was the immediate consequence of Black Death, and as a result there was scarcity of labor, manual laborers in the fields. So these are the major socio-political events. After Black Death, also we find the spirit of inquiry increases with the leadership of Lollard and Whiteley. So no longer we are finding people's unflinching loyalty to church and the episcopal agents. The spirit of inquiry is gradually developing. 1381, as a result, we find peasant revolution in England by the leadership of Wat Tyler. And also the English language has overcome by this time the period of transition, and East Midland dialect has been accepted as the standard English dialect. French and English have amalgamated to form the standard English tongue. And also by the time of the ruling time of King Richard II and Henry IV, we find all the official documents, all the official tasks are generally executed with the help of English language. So English language here reached almost a formative stage, and now it has achieved its final stage of development. And the age of anonymity is over. No longer we are find anonymous books. The authorship is very clearly mentioned. And English prose was developed. Sir Thomas Malory, you must remember Thomas Malory for his wonderful book Morte Arthur, and Sir John Mandeville. They were known as wonderful and significant prose writers of this time. Now let me discuss about Geoffrey Chaucer. Geoffrey Chaucer was born in 1340 and died in 1400. He was a son of wine merchant in London. He was a foreign diplomat. He lived on royal pensions and bounties. He was the first poet to be buried in Westminster Abbey Poets' Corner. John of Gaunt was his patron. And Chaucer visited Europe, as I have already mentioned, because of his diplomatic mission. And Chaucer's work always getting influenced by the foreign authors and their literary outputs. Chaucer visited Europe several times. He was in Italy from 1372 to 1378, and he was in France from 1374 to 1377. These continental missions opened his talent to the imprint of Italian and French literary taste upon it. Therefore, Chaucer's career evolved through three different phases: French period, which lasted from 1359 to 1372, Italian period 1372 to 1386, and finally English period, which lasted from 1386 to 1400. Out of the composite literary career of Chaucer stand out masterpieces Troilus and Cressida and the Canterbury Tales. However, he has several minor works, mostly belonging to a genre close to his heart, dream vision or dream allegory. So Chaucer's literary outputs can broadly be classified into three periods. So first period is the French period. In this period, the poems are heavily modeled upon original French works. They are clumsy in style and immature. First poem of French period is The Romaunt of the Rose. It was written in octosyllabic couplet and contains 8,000 lines. It is an allegorical poem based upon La Roma de la Rose by Guillaume de Loris and Jean de Meung. Next work is written in the dream allegory form. It is the Book of Duchess. It is a poem belongs to this French group. It is written in 1369. Here he bemoans the death of his patron, John of Gaunt's first wife, Blanche of Lancaster, and the poem is written in dream allegory format. Next poem of French group is The Complaint unto Pity. And another poem of French period is An ABC. It is one of his earlier works and a close translation of a French Marian poem by Guillaume de Bouleville. The Complaint of Mars is also a minor poem belonging to this French group. Next period is Italian period, and I have already mentioned the time frame of the Italian period, 1372 to 1386. This Italian period shows greater efficiency in the handling of meters and subject. Important poem of this period is Annalida and Arcite. Annalida and Arcite is an unfinished poem of 357 lines. Queen Annalida of Armenia, here falsely being wooed by Arcite of Thebes from Greece. Next poem is The Parliament of Fowls. In the characterization of the birds, we find Chaucer's comic original genius. Next work is Troilus and Cressida. In the characterization of Cressida and his uncle Pandoras, we find psychological insights. It is a long poem collected from Boccaccio and was written in rhyme royal stanza. It is the best narrative poem by Chaucer. Troilus and Cressida is Chaucer's only complete long narrative poem in rhyme royal. It actually introduces an intellectual and psychological quality that English literature before Chaucer never saw. The source for this poem is Boccaccio's Il Filistretto, a love poem dealing with the Troy legend. It is a love story set against the Trojan War. Troilus, Hector's brother, scoffs at love until he sees Cressid, a lovely widow living in Troy under Hector's protection. Troilus deserts the Trojans and joins the Greek camp. Chaucer unfolds this love story majestically through 5 long volumes. By medieval standard, it was a tragedy. Next work of Italian period is The House of Fame. It is a dream allegory written in octosyllabic couplet. Here Chaucer envisions that he was being carried away to the House of Fame by an eagle, and he sees applicants for the House of Fame. Some are getting admitted to the House of Fame, while some of them are denied entry. Next work is The Legend of Good Women. It is very significant work because we find first use of heroic couplet in English literature in The Legend of Good Women. Chaucer's plan was to tell 19 tales of virtuous women from antiquity, but significantly it is an unfinished poem. He finished writing 18 tales and the 19th tale remains unfinished. The English group 1386 to 1400, the time period of the English group of poems, and here the Canterbury Tales is the masterpiece, and Chaucer's fame chiefly rests on the Canterbury Tales. It is an unfinished work yet, but it showcases Chaucer's genius and originality as a poet of excellent caliber. The theme is 29 pilgrims decided to visit Thomas Becket's tomb in Canterbury, and the tabard inn they have met each other. In order to drive away the monotony of the journey, the owner of Tabard's Inn, Mr. Harry Bailey, asked them to tell 2 stories on their way to the shrine and 2 more stories on their way to their home. Here, Chaucer finished writing 24 tales, but majority of the tales remain unwritten. The Person's Tale and the Tale of Melibœus are only written in prose, while other tales are written in pure verse. The unfinished work shows his poetic genius in characterization, humor, wit, and mastery in dealing with realistic characters. People from various social ranks participate in his narrative universe. He adds to English literature the elements of humor and pathos, which are unprecedented examples in British literature before Chaucer. His humor is urban in tone. The Canterbury Tales has a general prologue, which unfolds the picture of spring and life-giving rains. As David M. Jesmer points out, I'm quoting, Chaucer is the first poet ever to have put this picture into words, even though spring is a potential subject of poetry, classical, medieval, and modern. The poem is the grand execution of Chaucer's idea of bringing together in a pilgrimage 29 sundry folks. They represent a wide range of 14th century English society. Each pilgrim, going by the proposal of Harry Bailey, the host of Tabard Inn, is to tell 2 stories on the way to Canterbury and 2 other on the way back. The teller of the best tale, judged by Bailey, is to be rewarded at the end of the pilgrimage. Chaucer's project was not completed, only 24 tales came down to us. This masterpiece is a mark in the history of English literature. By virtues of characterization, storytelling, and social realism, Chaucer put together a throbbing, down-to-earth, and complex world of men and manners. Some of the remarkable tales are the Knight's Tale, the Miller's Tale, the Reeve's Tale, the Cook's Tale, the Man of Law's Tale, the Friar's Tale, the Clerk's Tale, the Merchant's Tale, the Monk's Tale, the Non-Priest's Tale, and most importantly, the Wife of Bath's Tale is very interesting because through the character of Wife of Bath, Chaucer exposes female promiscuity during that time, and at the same time, the Wife of Bath turns out to be a very outspoken female character, and this kind of female bold character is a rare example in British literature before Chaucer. And also Chaucer imported the decasyllabic couplet from France. The 7-line stanza AB AB BCC has known as rhyme royal. See, Chaucer was a significant influence on other poets after him. We find a group of English poets and we find a group of Scottish poets who were deeply moved by Chaucerian influences, and we call them British Chaucerians or English Chaucerians and Scottish Chaucerians. In my next video, I will be discussing in detail about this group of poets known as the Chaucerians. But remember, Chaucer has other contemporary poets also during his time. William Langland is such a famous poet. Next is John Gower. John Gower is also a very significant poet. William Langland is famous for his work, The Vision of William Concerning Piers the Plowman. The work has 3 texts, 3 manuscripts. It is existing in A, B and C manuscripts. A is the shortest manuscript. It has 2,500 lines. B manuscript has more than 7,200 lines. And C manuscript has 7,300 lines. The authorship is a little bit doubtful because many critics believe that A text is genuinely written by Langland, while B and C texts were interpolated by inferior poets for later times. It is a virulent attack on church and its corruption. Piers the Plowman appears as the messianic deliverer in the poem. Langland was born in 1332 in Shropshire. Next poet of Chaucer's time is John Gower. He was a man born in noble family of Kent. His first poem was Speculum Meditatis. It was written in French. Next work, Vox Clementis, was written in Latin, and Confessio Amantis was written in English. Confessio Amantis was written in octosyllabic couplet, and here we find the allegorical representation of 7 deadly sins. The name of 3 works of John Gower and their language. These questions are very important for NEET or SET questions. Please remember the details. Next poet is John Barbour. He is the first of Scottish poets to claim our attention. His famous poem is Bruce, written in 1375. It is a lengthy book and it contains 13,000 lines and it has 20 books. The theme is the Scottish struggle for freedom from 1286 till the death of Bruce and the burial of his heart in 1332. The central theme is Rise of Bruce and the Battle of Bannockburn. Significant prose writers of this age are said John Mandeville. Mandeville is famous for his travels, his prose work Travels, and Thomas Malory, his Morte d'Arthur. It is again based on Arthurian legends and it is a courtly romance. And also John Wycliffe was a significant prose writer of the time. Wycliffe talks about the ecclesiastical problems, the corruption within the church. These are the subject matters of Wycliffe's works. And in 1476 we find the rise of the printing press in British soil under the leadership of William Caxton. This is a significant historical event also. So, in my next video I will be discussing in detail after Chaucer what are the major poetical figures appeared in the British literature and the major socio-political and literary events that shape and modify the literary outputs of the age. So stay tuned, keep on watching my videos. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe my channel and take care. Bye.